Donald Trump's family. Vanessa Trump, Donald Trump Jr.'s wife, has filed for divorce.
Are Donald Trump Jr. and his wife calling it quits? The New York Post headline blares, they are headed for divorce.
Vanessa Trump has just made a huge announcement about her ex-husband, Donald Trump Jr., and what she revealed shocked everyone. Ever since their divorce, she's kept things low-key, quietly raising their children and staying away from the spotlight. But now, Vanessa has stepped forward with a statement that's got people talking. Her announcement has raised questions not just about Donald Jr., but about where things really stand between them now.
The president's son, Donald Jr., facing bombshell headlines and now headed for a $150 million divorce.
What exactly did she say? And why is she speaking out now? Join us as we uncover everything behind Vanessa Trump's unexpected announcement. The beginning of Vanessa and Donald Jr. Before Vanessa Trump became Donald Trump Jr.'s ex-wife, the two met in a lovely moment, long before marriage or headlines. Back then, she was still Vanessa Hayden, a young model and actress in New York City. She loved the camera, and she loved her city. And that's where her story with Donald Trump Jr. quietly began. In 2003, while attending a fashion show in Manhattan, Vanessa met Donald Trump Jr. for the first time. It wasn't a planned meeting, and at first it didn't feel like anything special. Donald Jr. had come to the show with his father, who was then hosting The Apprentice and already loved being in the spotlight. During the intermission, Donald Trump Sr. walked up to Vanessa with his son and tried to make an introduction, and Vanessa remembered that moment clearly. Donald Sr. said, "I don't think you've met my son, Donald Trump Jr." But Vanessa replied politely, "Yeah, we just met 5 minutes ago." She wasn't being rude. It was just awkward. She didn't feel any sparks then, and neither did Donald Jr. It felt like just another interaction in a long night full of faces and names. But here's the interesting part. 6 weeks later, something changed. Vanessa and Donald Jr. met again, but this time it wasn't at a fashion show or under flashing lights. It was at a birthday party, and a mutual friend had brought them both along. At first, they didn't even realize they had already met, but once they started talking, something clicked. This time, they talked for a full hour straight, and it didn't feel forced. They laughed, they listened to each other, and they connected. From there, things moved naturally. They started spending more time together, getting to know each other away from cameras or public eyes. Vanessa wasn't a stranger to high society, but Donald Jr.'s world was on a different level. He was the oldest son of one of the most famous businessmen in the world. But around her, he didn't have to act like he was someone important. He could just be Don.
I like winning. And I like fighting for Americans. And I got 5 young kids, and I want to make sure they grow up in an America that we actually recognize.
After a year of dating, in November 2004, Donald Jr. decided to propose. But the way he did it caused a fuss for years. Instead of a quiet dinner or a private getaway, he chose to pop the question outside a jewelry store at the Short Hills Mall in New Jersey. Paparazzi were already waiting because this wasn't just any engagement. It had been arranged. The $100,000 engagement ring he used wasn't bought with his own money. It was a gift from the jeweler. In exchange, Donald Jr. had agreed to propose in front of the cameras, right outside the store, so the brand could get publicity. And that's exactly what he did. To some, it seemed like a smart business deal. To others, it felt a little too transactional for something as personal as an engagement. But Vanessa smiled for the cameras and showed off her new ring, and the moment was captured in magazines and tabloids across the country. She didn't say much about the setup, but later, people wondered how she truly felt about it. Was she okay with turning something so intimate into a public performance? Or did she see it as just part of being with someone from the Trump world? These questions followed her for years, especially after her later decisions. Still, the wedding went ahead, and it was nothing short of grand. On November 12, 2005, Vanessa Hayden became Vanessa Trump. The ceremony took place at the luxurious Mar-a-Lago Club in Palm Beach, Florida. This was no ordinary venue. It was owned by Donald Trump Sr., and it had hosted celebrities, business tycoons, and now the wedding of his oldest son. His sister, Judge Marianne Trump Barry, officiated the wedding in front of hundreds of guests, many of whom were familiar faces in Manhattan's elite circles. Vanessa wore a flowing Vera Wang gown, and while she smiled for the cameras, those close to her said she seemed most at ease when the cameras were off. During the reception, there were emotional toasts, a multi-tiered cake, and a packed dance floor that stayed lively well into the night. The Trump name brought the flash, but Vanessa brought the warmth. Everyone noticed. For Vanessa, that life meant stepping into a whole new world.
Their marriage chronicled here on Extra.
Donald and Vanessa, congratulations.
She wasn't just a model or actress anymore. She was now the daughter-in-law of one of the most powerful and talked-about men in America. And with that came a long list of expectations. People would watch how she dressed, how she raised her kids, and how she carried herself in public, and she seemed ready for it. After the celebration, the couple jetted off for a luxurious honeymoon. Though they kept the destination private, friends later shared it included stops in the Caribbean and the south of France. They stayed in private villas, far from the spotlight, savoring a rare window of quiet before returning to the high-profile world they were now a permanent part of. Not long after they returned, the couple hosted a private party in Manhattan to share some exciting news. Vanessa was expecting their first child. It was an elegant gathering with close friends and family. Guests remembered her glowing with joy, proud to begin this next chapter. Donald Jr. was beaming too, introducing Vanessa over and over again as the future mother of my children, as if the weight of fatherhood had suddenly changed his perspective. But before we dive into what came next in Vanessa's shocking revelation, you might be wondering who Vanessa was before she became a Trump. Her story didn't just start by meeting Donald Jr. She had a life, a career, and a name of her own before stepping into the Trump spotlight. So stay tuned as we delve more into this. Vanessa, Trump before she became Trump. Long before the world knew her as Vanessa Trump, she was simply Vanessa K. Hayden. Born on December 18, 1977, in the heart of Manhattan, New York City. Raised on the Upper East Side, Vanessa lived in a townhouse that echoed the charm of old New York wealth. Yet her upbringing was a blend of privilege and hustle. Her mother, Bonnie K. Hayden, ran K Models, a successful modeling agency. She came from Danish and Swedish roots, and Vanessa's maternal grandfather, Kai Ewens, was a well-known Danish jazz musician. These European artistic influences shaped much of Vanessa's early sense of grace and poise. Her stepfather, Charles Hayden, was a lawyer and provided a strong sense of structure and discipline in her life. Vanessa attended the Dwight School, a prestigious private school in Manhattan. Surrounded by children of diplomats, celebrities, and professionals, Vanessa learned early how to carry herself with confidence in elite social circles. But she wasn't just another pretty face in a prep school. She had ambition. Vanessa started modeling as a child and was eventually signed to Wilhelmina Models.
Vanessa got into modeling at a young age, thanks to her mother running the K Models agency. She was also later signed with Wilhelmina Models,
one of the most prominent agencies in the industry. Her natural beauty, tall frame, and calm demeanor made her a standout. In her teens and early 20s, she appeared in numerous fashion campaigns and editorial shoots. She wasn't a tabloid regular, but within the fashion world, she was recognized. Her early years on set taught her the discipline of the camera, how to hold a pose, stay poised under pressure, and project confidence. But modeling wasn't her only interest. Vanessa had a creative spirit and a curiosity about acting. In 2003, she landed a small role in the romantic comedy Something's Gotta Give, starring Jack Nicholson and Diane Keaton. Though it was a brief appearance, it marked her crossover into the movie industry. Later, in 2010, she was featured on the reality show Bret Michaels' Life as I Know It, giving the public a rare glimpse of her off-camera personality. That same year, she also ventured into the fashion business. She launched a line of stylish and functional handbags under the label La Pochette. The bags were designed with both luxury and practicality in mind, catering to young professionals and socialites. And with this, it was clear that Vanessa wasn't content to rely on modeling gigs or her social connections. She wanted to build something of her own. But long before she was an entrepreneur or a reality TV presence, Vanessa's personal life had already made headlines. During high school, she was in a relationship with Valentin Rivera, a local gang member from the Latin Kings. Their relationship was unconventional.
Valentin Rivera, and he spoke to Page 6 TV, claiming that he was Vanessa's first love in high school.
Especially given Vanessa's elite social background. Rivera later claimed he ended things when a New York Post article linked Vanessa romantically to Leonardo DiCaprio, a rumor that DiCaprio's publicist denied. Still, the story spread quickly, and Vanessa was suddenly caught in a media whirlwind. Then, in 1998, she began dating someone even more high-profile, Saudi Prince Khalid bin Bandar bin Sultan Al Saud. Their relationship lasted for several years and was serious enough that many close to them believed it might lead to marriage. Vanessa was frequently seen with the prince in Manhattan, dining in upscale restaurants and attending private parties. But everything changed after September 11th, 2001. The prince's father, who was then the Saudi ambassador to the United States, was reportedly linked, albeit indirectly, to individuals associated with the al-Qaeda hijackers. Under increasing scrutiny, the prince left the U.S., and their relationship quietly came to an end. However, despite the emotional toll, Vanessa pressed forward. She wasn't someone who lived in the past. Later that same year, she and her sister Veronica opened a Manhattan nightclub named Sessa. It quickly became a trendy hotspot, attracting a young, stylish crowd. Vanessa, once a model posing for flashbulbs, was now managing the scene behind the velvet ropes. Her experience in high society, fashion, and entertainment helped her navigate the nightlife business with ease. Throughout all these ventures, one thing remained certain. Vanessa had a quiet resilience. She didn't crave fame for its own sake. She wasn't chasing headlines or trying to stay in the public eye. She simply followed her passions, stayed true to herself, and kept her circle small. Many close to her described her as loyal, calm under pressure, and always protective of her loved ones. By the early 2000s, Vanessa had built a life filled with experience, from runways to restaurants and from relationships to entrepreneurship. She was no stranger to fame, but she didn't depend on it. So when she met Donald Trump Jr. and stepped into one of America's most talked about families, she brought with her not just beauty and grace, but a strong sense of self. She knew who she was before she became a Trump, and that would shape everything that came after. By the early 2000s, Vanessa had built a life filled with experience, from runways to nightclubs, and from business ventures to personal heartbreaks. She had faced both privilege and pressure, and she had done it all while creating a path of her own. She was already someone who had stories to tell, whether or not the world was listening yet. And when Donald Trump introduced her to his eldest son at that fashion show in Manhattan, that moment changed everything. But here's the most astonishing part: Vanessa's life after marriage. After Vanessa Trump married Donald Trump Jr. in November 2005, her life took a new turn, one that was both dazzling on the surface and quietly demanding behind the scenes. Vanessa quickly embraced her role as a wife, and soon after, a mother.
She could be a mommy blogger, and she could take on a cause. She is in a position to do something great.
She and Donald Jr. wasted no time starting a family. Their first child, Kai Madison Trump, was born in 2007. Over the next several years, the couple welcomed 4 more children: Donald III, Tristan, Spencer, and Chloe. Raising 5 children is no small feat, and Vanessa took on the job with dedication. She focused on creating a stable home, staying out of the spotlight as much as she could, and giving her children a sense of normalcy despite their last name. But while she was busy at home, things outside were changing. Donald Jr. became more involved in the Trump Organization and later stepped into a more public role as his father ran for president. His presence in the media grew louder, his opinions bolder, and his public appearances more frequent. This meant more time away from home and more eyes watching their every move. At first, Vanessa managed to stay out of the headlines. She rarely gave interviews, rarely made public appearances without her husband, and hardly ever voiced her thoughts to the media. She wanted peace. But behind the scenes, the strain of being in such a high-profile family began to wear on her. The pressures of raising 5 children alone while her husband was on the road or making political statements online began to show. Vanessa was still the same calm and kind person, but many noticed how she had become quieter and more withdrawn. She had once been a model and actress, someone who thrived in creative spaces. Now she was juggling carpool, homework, and life in a political storm. Rumors about their marriage began to surface, though nothing was confirmed at first. People whispered about tension, about distance, about Donald Jr.'s growing ambitions and Vanessa's quiet retreat into family life. There were reports of disagreements and long periods apart. Still, she stayed committed, putting on a brave face for the public. Then, in 2018, after nearly 13 years of marriage, Vanessa filed for an uncontested divorce.
Vanessa Trump's marriage ended in 2018, and from the looks of it, her relationship was anything but happy.
The announcement was met with speculation, but the details were kept mostly private. What was clear was that Vanessa had reached a point where she could no longer stay in a marriage that had drifted far from the partnership it once was. After the divorce, Vanessa chose to keep things quiet, especially in the beginning. She focused all her energy on raising her 5 children and giving them a stable, peaceful life, because the media attention around their father and grandfather never really stopped. She stayed in New York, and she did everything she could to protect her kids from the non-stop buzz of politics. But over time, things began to change, and the quiet, often overlooked version of Vanessa slowly disappeared. In her place was someone new, and that was a confident, glowing woman who seemed to have found herself again. One of the first things people noticed was how different she looked, because Vanessa seemed younger, healthier, and full of energy more than she had in years. Her figure was toned and graceful, just like during her modeling days, and her blonde hair now had a soft, sun-kissed look that lit up her face in the best way. However, it wasn't just about how she looked, since her whole vibe had changed. Vanessa had fully embraced a new way of living, and it was one that focused on wellness, balance, and personal growth. She wasn't tied to the pressure and spotlight of her ex-husband's political world anymore, so she could finally focus on herself, and she welcomed that freedom with open arms. She found her way back to fashion and creativity, and she began digging into old design ideas while spending more time doing the things she once loved. She also reconnected with longtime friends, and she grew her social circle while showing up at events that had nothing to do with politics. She was now attending charity galas, art shows, and women's empowerment gatherings, and it didn't go unnoticed because people realized that Vanessa wasn't just making it through the divorce, she was thriving. However, even though the marriage ended, Vanessa stayed close to the Trump family because she knew how important it was for her kids to stay connected. She made sure they still saw their grandparents and cousins regularly, and at an event in February celebrating Donald Trump Sr.'s return to the political scene. Vanessa stood proudly beside her children. That family moment made one thing clear, which was that the marriage was over, but the family bonds were still strong. And it was at that very event where people really saw how far Vanessa had come, because her glow-up wasn't just on the outside. It came from somewhere deeper. She carried herself with quiet strength, calm energy, and real independence. And it was clear she was in full control of her life now, because it showed in everything she did. For years, people had wondered what really led to the end of her marriage with Donald Jr. And while some thought it was political stress, others believed it was personal differences. But Vanessa had stayed silent, and that silence lasted until recently. After keeping quiet for so long, Vanessa has started opening up in her own way because, according to sources close to her, she's been sharing the emotional weight she carried during the marriage, along with what really caused it to fall apart. She reportedly felt suffocated by all the chaos that came with being part of the Trump family, and everything changed when her father-in-law became president. Suddenly, there were Secret Service agents outside her house, and constant security checks with almost no privacy, so it became hard for her to even breathe. And then there was the change in Donald Jr. He had gone from being a caring husband and father to someone who seemed angry, short-tempered, and totally wrapped up in politics. Friends close to the couple noticed that Vanessa was often left alone, juggling the house and the kids while Donald Jr. chased the spotlight, and the loneliness wore her down. She didn't want to be a political figure because she just wanted to be a mom, a creative person, and a woman who could live in peace. As time went on, the emotional distance between them kept growing, and they stopped talking the way they used to, while the affection faded. Eventually, Vanessa realized that if she didn't leave, she'd lose herself completely. But that wasn't the end of her story, because now, years after the breakup, Vanessa has quietly entered a brand new chapter in her life, and it's one that's filled with calm, love, and a fresh start. And here's where things get really interesting, because according to the Daily Mail, Vanessa is now in a serious relationship with none other than golf legend Tiger Woods. They reportedly started seeing each other around Thanksgiving, and over the past few months, their bond has only gotten stronger. They're both living in Palm Beach, Florida, and they've found plenty in common when it comes to lifestyle and raising kids. In fact, their children even go to the same exclusive school. And even though they haven't gone public as a couple, people close to them say the relationship is well known in their circles, and it's not just casual. Those who know Vanessa well say this feels different. And Tiger, who has also dealt with a lot of public challenges, seems to understand Vanessa in a way not many others could. Their connection is based on shared values, including privacy, family, and healing. And while the world may keep guessing, Vanessa isn't trying to make this into a big media story, because she's taking things slowly, on her own terms. So, do you think Vanessa and Tiger make a good match? And if you were in Vanessa's shoes, would you have stayed in the Trump family spotlight or chosen a quiet, fresh start like she did? Drop it in the comments section below. If you enjoyed watching this video, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more. Also, click the next video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it.